A quiet single father faces a dangerous blackmailer right outside his apartment hallway and decides to intervene. What he doesn't know? The woman he just saved is holding secrets that could destroy them both. Within 72 hours, Liam Carter will have to choose between his daughter's safety and protecting a stranger from a dark past. But as the line between hero and reckless fool blurs, one question remains. Can he save her before everything collapses? Stay with this story until the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The rain came down hard that Thursday night, drumming against the windows like it had something to prove. Liam Carter sat hunched over his desk in the cramped second bedroom of his apartment, 3 monitors glowing in the darkness, casting blue light across his tired face. His fingers moved across the keyboard in practiced rhythm. Diagnostic, repair, rinse, repeat. Another laptop from another client who downloaded something they shouldn't have. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at the time. 11:47 p.m. Late, but not unusual. This was when he did his best work, when the city quieted down and his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, was asleep in the room next door. He could hear the faint hum of her nightlight through the wall, that cheap plastic turtle that projected stars onto her ceiling. It was one of the few things that helped her sleep through the night without calling for him. Liam leaned back in his chair, the springs protesting under his weight. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit a table. But it was theirs. He'd worked his ass off to keep it that way after Sophie's mom left 3 years ago. No warning, no explanation that made sense. Just a note on the counter and an empty closet. He didn't think about her much anymore. Didn't have the energy for it. The screen in front of him flickered, and he frowned. That wasn't part of the diagnostic. He clicked through a few windows, checking the network activity, and his frown deepened. There was a signal, faint but persistent, pinging from somewhere close. Too close. He pulled up a network map and watched as the signal triangulated. His hallway. "What the hell?" he muttered, leaning closer. Before he could dig deeper, a sound cut through the rain. Sharp. Raised voices. A woman's voice, tense and clipped, followed by a man's, lower, threatening. Liam's instincts kicked in before his brain caught up. He stood, moved to the door, pressed his ear against it. The voices were clearer now, just outside in the hallway. "I don't have it," the woman said. Her tone was controlled, but there was an edge to it. Fear, maybe, or anger, hard to tell. "You think I'm stupid?" the man shot back. "I know you've got it. And if you don't hand it over, I'm releasing everything tomorrow morning. Your career, your reputation, gone. You understand me?" Liam's hand hovered over the deadbolt. He should stay inside. Mind his business. He had Sophie to think about. Getting involved in whatever this was could bring trouble he didn't need. But then the woman spoke again, quieter this time. "Please, just give me more time." The desperation in her voice made the decision for him. He unlocked the deadbolt, turned the handle, and stepped into the hallway. The man was standing too close to her, crowding her space, one hand braced against the wall beside her head. He was tall, mid-40s maybe, with slicked back hair and a long coat that looked expensive. The woman was pressed against the wall, chin up, eyes defiant even though her hands were trembling. Liam recognized her. The new neighbor. She'd moved in 2 weeks ago, apartment 4C, diagonal from his. He'd seen her a few times in passing, dark hair, sharp features, always dressed like she had somewhere important to be. They'd never spoken. "Everything okay out here?" Liam's voice was calm, almost casual, but his body language told a different story. He stood square in the hallway, hands loose at his sides, eyes locked on the man. The man turned, annoyance flashing across his face. "This doesn't concern you, buddy. Go back inside." Liam didn't move. "Doesn't look like a friendly conversation." "Liam, it's fine," the woman said quickly, but her voice betrayed her. It wasn't fine. The man took a step toward Liam, sizing him up. Liam wasn't particularly imposing, average height, lean build, wearing a faded t-shirt and sweatpants, but he didn't flinch. Years of dealing with difficult clients, late-night service calls in sketchy neighborhoods, and raising a kid on his own had taught him how to hold his ground. "You her boyfriend or something?" the man asked, a sneer curling his lip. "Neighbor," Liam said evenly, "and I'm asking you to leave." The man laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Or what?" Liam took a single step forward, closing the distance just enough. His voice dropped, quiet but firm. Or I call the cops and tell them there's a man threatening a woman in my building. And when they show up, you'll have to explain why you're here. For a moment, the man didn't move. Then something shifted in his expression, calculation maybe. He glanced at the woman, then back at Liam. "This isn't over," he said to her, jabbing a finger in her direction. Then he turned and walked toward the stairwell, his footsteps echoing as he disappeared. The hallway fell silent except for the rain still pounding against the far window. The woman let out a breath she'd been holding and leaned back against the wall, pressing her palms against it like she needed the support. "You shouldn't have done that." Liam shrugged. "Probably not." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time he noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. She wasn't just scared, she was running on empty. "I'm Arya," she said after a moment. "Arya Bennett. I live across the hall." "I know," Liam said. "Liam Carter, 4B. She managed a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for whatever that was. You okay?" "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." Liam hesitated, then nodded. "If you need anything, I won't." She cut him off, but not unkindly. "But thank you." She pushed off the wall, walked to her door, and let herself inside. The lock clicked behind her. Liam stood there for a moment longer, staring at her door, then turned and went back into his own apartment. He locked the deadbolt, checked on Sophie, still asleep, stars still spinning on her ceiling, and returned to his desk. The network signal was gone. He sat down, pulled up the logs again, and started tracing it. Whatever had been pinging from the hallway earlier had stopped the moment that man left. Coincidence? Maybe. But Liam didn't believe in coincidences. He opened a new terminal window and started digging. Down. The next morning, Liam woke to Sophie's voice singing off-key in the kitchen. He groaned, rolled over, and checked his phone. 7:23 a.m. 3 hours of sleep. Not great, but he'd survived on less. He dragged himself out of bed and found Sophie standing on a chair in front of the toaster, wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas and conducting an invisible orchestra with a butter knife. "Morning, Bug," he said, ruffling her hair as he passed. "Morning, Daddy," she chirped. "I made toast." The toast was charred on one side and pale on the other. Perfect. "Looks amazing," he said, grabbing the plate she offered. "You eat yet?" "Yep. Cereal." "Good girl." She hopped down from the chair and skipped into the living room, already launching into a detailed explanation of a dream she'd had involving dragons and a trampoline. Liam listened with half his attention while he made coffee, his mind still on last night. That signal. The man in the hallway. Arya's fear. He didn't know what kind of trouble she was in, but his gut told him it wasn't small. By the time he got Sophie ready for school and walked her to the bus stop, his brain was running scenarios. Blackmail, data breach, corporate espionage, or something simpler. An ex, maybe, with leverage. He didn't know Arya, didn't owe her anything, but he couldn't shake the look in her eyes. When he got back to the apartment, he made a decision. He pulled up his network logs from the night before and started reconstructing the signal. It took him an hour, but he found it. A Bluetooth device, low power, designed to transmit data over short distances. Someone had planted it in the hallway, someone who wanted to monitor Arya. Liam sat back, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a domestic dispute. This was planned. That evening, around 6, there was a knock on his door. Liam opened it to find Arya standing there, looking just as exhausted as she had the night before. She was wearing jeans and a loose sweater, hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger without it. Vulnerable. "Can I come in?" she asked. Liam stepped aside and she walked past him into the small living room. She didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed, like she was holding herself together. "I need help," she said. Liam closed the door. "Okay. I don't know who else to ask. I can't go to the police. I can't go to my friends. I can't." She stopped, took a breath. "That man last night. His name is Derek Hale. He's blackmailing me." "What does he have?" She hesitated, then met his eyes. "Everything. Private emails, financial records, photos, things that could destroy my career, my reputation, my life. He hacked my cloud storage 6 months ago, and he's been sitting on it, waiting. For what? Money. Or compliance, I'm not sure anymore. She laughed bitterly. He works in tech security. Ironic, right? He used to consult for the company I work for. That's how he got access. What does he want from you now? He wants me to give him proprietary data from my company, client lists, financial projections, trade secrets. If I do it, I'm complicit in corporate espionage. If I don't, he releases everything. Liam processed that. And the deadline? Tomorrow, noon. Less than 18 hours. Why me? Liam asked. Arya looked at him, and for the first time since she'd walked in, her guard dropped. Because you're the only person who stepped in when you didn't have to, and because I saw your setup last night when you opened your door. I know what you do. I need someone who understands this kind of thing, someone who isn't already compromised. Liam ran a hand through his hair. I fix computers. I'm not a hacker. But you know how systems work. You know how to find things. And you're not afraid of him. That last part wasn't entirely true. Liam wasn't afraid of Derek Hale, but he was afraid of what getting involved might mean for Sophie. Still, looking at Arya now, seeing the desperation and the exhaustion and the faint, fragile hope in her eyes, he couldn't walk away. Okay, he said, I'll help. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. But we do this my way, and you tell me everything, no secrets. She nodded. Deal. Liam gestured to the couch. Sit. Start from the beginning. It took 2 hours for Arya to lay it all out. She was a senior analyst at a mid-sized financial consulting firm. Smart, ambitious, good at her job. Derek Hale had been brought in to audit their cybersecurity after a minor breach a year ago. He'd been professional, competent, forgettable. Until 6 months ago, when he'd reached out to her privately, claiming he'd found vulnerabilities in her personal accounts and offering to help secure them. She'd trusted him, given him access. Big mistake. Within weeks, he'd copied everything. Then he'd vanished from the company, contract fulfilled, and she'd thought nothing of it. Until 3 months ago, when he'd sent her an email with a single attachment, a photo of her at a work conference, slightly drunk, with a colleague's hand on her waist. Innocent, but easy to misconstrue. The email had said, just so you know I'm serious. Since then, he'd been drip-feeding her demands. Small things at first. Inside information on upcoming deals, client preferences. Then bigger. And now this, full proprietary data, the kind that could get her arrested. He's escalating, Liam said. I know. And if you give him what he wants, he'll just come back for more. I know that too. Arya's voice cracked slightly. But I don't know what else to do. Liam leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We cut him off, permanently. How? We find where he's storing your data. We delete it, and we make sure he can't threaten you again. He's a professional, Liam. He'll have backups, redundancies. Then we take those too. Arya stared at him. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's doable. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. What do you need from me? Every piece of communication you've had with him, every email, text, voice message, and access to your devices. Okay. And Arya? Liam's voice was firm. From now on, you don't respond to him. You don't acknowledge him. You let me handle it. She hesitated, then agreed. Over the next few hours, Liam set up a digital perimeter. He isolated Arya's devices, scanned them for malware, and built a clean partition where they could work without Derek monitoring them. It was meticulous, tedious work, but he'd done it 100 times for clients. This time, the stakes were just higher. Sophie came out of her room around 9, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, who's that? Liam looked up to see her standing in the doorway in her pajamas, staring at Arya. This is Arya, he said. She's a friend. She needed some help with her computer. Sophie tilted her head, studying Arya with the unnerving directness only kids could pull off. Are you staying for dinner? Arya smiled, genuine this time. I already ate, sweetheart, but thank you. Okay. Sophie wandered over to Liam and climbed into his lap, yawning. Can I watch a show? 1 episode, Liam said. Then bed. Deal. He set her up with her tablet and a pair of headphones, and she curled up on the couch, already absorbed in some animated nonsense. Arya watched them, something soft crossing her face. She's beautiful. She's a pain in the ass, Liam said, but his tone was warm. But yeah, she is. How long have you been doing this alone? 3 years? That's not easy. Nothing worth doing is. Arya looked at him for a long moment, then turned back to the screen. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone louder, maybe? More aggressive? Liam shrugged. I save that for when it matters. They worked in silence after that, the only sound Sophie's quiet laughter and the rain still pattering against the windows. By midnight, Liam had mapped Derek's communication patterns, identified his preferred platforms, and started building a profile of his digital footprint. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Go home, he told Arya. Get some sleep. I'll keep working. I can stay. You need rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She nodded reluctantly, gathered her things, and headed for the door. Before she left, she turned back. Liam? Yeah? Thank you, really. He met her eyes. We're not done yet. She smiled faintly, then left. Liam locked the door behind her, carried Sophie to bed, and returned to his desk. The clock read 12:34 a.m., 16 hours until Derek's deadline. He cracked his knuckles and got back to work. By dawn, Liam had a plan. It was risky, maybe reckless, but it was the only shot they had. Derek was meticulous, but he was also arrogant. And arrogance left cracks. Liam had found one. Derek's cloud storage was layered behind encryption and redundancy, but he'd made a mistake. He'd logged into a forum 6 weeks ago using the same IP address he'd used to contact Arya. That forum had lacked security. Liam had exploited it before for clients trying to recover lost passwords. He got in. It took another 3 hours to navigate Derek's storage architecture, but eventually, Liam found the folder labeled a B leverage. Hundreds of files, photos, documents, emails, everything Derek had threatened Arya with. Liam didn't delete it, not yet. If Derek noticed the files were gone before the deadline, he'd panic and release everything out of spite. Instead, Liam created a mirror, a perfect copy that he could manipulate. Then he wrote a script, a worm, essentially, that would activate the moment Derek accessed the folder next. It would corrupt every file, overwrite the backups, and erase the metadata. By the time Derek realized what was happening, it would be too late. The final piece was the bait. Liam drafted an email from a burner account, posing as a buyer interested in purchasing corporate data. He made it vague enough to be believable, specific enough to get Derek's attention. Then he sent it. Now, all they had to do was wait. Arya came back that morning at 10, looking like she hadn't slept. Liam handed her a cup of coffee and walked her through the plan. You're insane, she said when he finished. Probably. What if it doesn't work? Then we go to the police and hope for the best. She didn't look reassured. Arya, Liam said, his voice steady. Trust me. She searched his face, then nodded. Okay. At 11:47 a.m., Derek replied to the burner email. Liam's screen lit up with the notification. He opened it, scanned the message. Derek was interested, wanted proof of the data's value, wanted to meet. Liam typed back, playing the role. Tonight. Public place. I'll send the location. Derek agreed. Liam sat back, exhaling slowly. It's working, Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. So far. What happens tonight? We finish this. The meeting spot was a coffee shop downtown, busy enough to feel safe but not so crowded that Derek would get spooked. Liam arrived early, took a seat in the back corner, and waited. Arya was outside in her car, 2 blocks away, monitoring everything through a secure channel Liam had set up. Derek walked in at exactly 8 p.m. He scanned the room, spotted Liam, and walked over. You're the buyer? Derek asked, skepticism dripping from his voice. That's right, Liam said calmly. Derek sat down, leaning back in his chair. You don't look like someone with that kind of money. I don't have to look like anything. I just have to pay. Derek smirked. Show me proof of funds. Liam slid a tablet across the table. On it was a fabricated bank statement, just convincing enough to pass a quick glance. Derek studied it, then nodded. All right, let's talk terms. Liam leaned forward. Before we do that, I need to make sure the data's real. Show me a sample. Derek's eyes narrowed. You think I'm stupid? I'm not handing over files before I get paid. Then we have a problem, Liam said, because I'm not paying for something I can't verify. They stared at each other across the table. Then Derek pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward Liam. It was a preview of Arya's files, just enough to prove he had them, and just enough to trigger Liam's worm. Derek didn't notice. He pocketed the phone, satisfied. There. Happy? Very, Liam said. The worm was already working, spreading through Derek's system like wildfire, corrupting and deleting as it went. By the time Derek checked his files again, they'd be gone. So, Derek said, when do I get my money? Liam stood. You don't. Derek's expression shifted from confusion to anger. What? The files you just showed me? They're gone, along with every backup you have. Derek's face went pale. He yanked out his phone, tapping frantically. Liam watched as the realization hit. What did you do? Derek hissed. I took away your leverage. Liam's voice was ice. You're done. Derek lunged across the table, but Liam was already moving. He sidestepped, and Derek crashed into the empty chair. Heads turned. A barista shouted. Liam didn't wait. He walked out, calm and unhurried, and disappeared into the crowd. 2 days later, Derek Hale was arrested. Liam had sent an anonymous tip to the authorities, along with a carefully curated package of evidence showing Derek's blackmail operation. It wasn't just Arya, there were others. Victims Derek had been extorting for months. When the news broke, Arya called Liam. It's over, she said, her voice thick with relief. It's really over. Yeah, Liam said. It is. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. There was a pause. Then Arya laughed softly. You know, I still don't really know you. Sure you do, Liam said. I'm the guy next door who fixes computers. You're a lot more than that. Liam didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. There's a thing this weekend, Arya continued. A neighborhood gathering, block party kind of deal. You should come, bring Sophie. Maybe. Liam? Yeah? Thank you for everything. He smiled even though she couldn't see it. Any time. Saturday came, and Sophie dragged him to the block party despite his protests. There were kids running around, music playing, tables loaded with food. It was loud and chaotic and everything Liam usually avoided. But then he saw Arya. She was standing by the drink table talking to a neighbor, and when she spotted him, her face lit up. She walked over, and Sophie immediately latched onto her, chattering about the bounce house. She's got good taste, Arya said, grinning. She's got no filter, Liam corrected. Arya laughed, and for the first time in days, Liam felt something ease in his chest. They spent the afternoon together, Arya, Liam, and Sophie. It was easy, natural, like they'd been doing it for years. At one point, Arya reached for his hand, just for a moment, just long enough for him to know it wasn't an accident. Sophie noticed. She smiled, that knowing kid smile that said she saw everything. Liam didn't let go. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving, he was living. The week after the block party felt different. Not easier, exactly, but lighter. Liam found himself looking forward to things he'd usually brushed off. Running into Arya in the hallway, Sophie asking if Miss Arya could come over for dinner, the quiet moments when his phone buzzed with a message and he knew it was her before he even looked. It had been a long time since he'd let anyone get close. After Sophie's mom left, he'd built walls without even realizing it. Work, Sophie, sleep, repeat. Safe. Predictable. Lonely as hell, but he'd convinced himself it was necessary. Arya was changing that, and it scared him more than Derek Hale ever had. Thursday evening, Sophie was at the kitchen table working on a school project, something involving construction paper, glitter, and way too much glue. Liam was cleaning up the disaster zone when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe. Hello? Silence on the other end. Not dead air. He could hear breathing. Hello? He repeated, his tone sharper. The line went dead. Liam frowned, staring at the screen. Probably a spam call. He set the phone down and went back to scraping glue off the table. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Same unknown number. This time, when he answered, a voice came through. Male. Distorted, like it was being run through a filter. You made a mistake. Liam's stomach dropped. Who is this? You think you're smart. You think you won. But you have no idea what you started. If this is about Derek, Derek was nothing. A middleman. You took away leverage that wasn't his to begin with. The line went dead again. Liam stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, his mind racing. Sophie looked up from her project, glitter dusting her cheeks. Daddy, you okay? He forced a smile. Yeah, Bug, I'm fine. But he wasn't, not even close. He texted Arya immediately. We need to talk tonight. Her response came within seconds. My place or yours? Yours. 9 p.m. Sophie went to bed at 8:30, and Liam waited until he heard her breathing even out before slipping across the hall. Arya opened the door before he could knock, like she'd been standing there waiting. What happened? She asked, pulling him inside. He told her about the calls, both of them. When he finished, Arya's face had gone pale. Derek wasn't working alone, she said quietly. That's what I'm thinking. She crossed her arms, pacing the length of her small living room. Her apartment was almost identical to his, same layout, same beige walls, but she'd made it hers. Framed art on the walls, a bookshelf crammed with paperbacks, a couch that looked like it had come from an actual furniture store instead of a curb. I thought it was over, she said, her voice tight. I thought we were done. So did I. She stopped pacing and looked at him. What do we do? We figure out who's behind this, and we shut them down before they get any closer. Liam, you have Sophie to think about. If this escalates, it's already escalating, he cut her off. And if we don't deal with it now, it's only going to get worse. Arya stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, where do we start? Derek's communications. Everything he sent you, everyone he talked to, there has to be a trail. They spent the next 2 hours combing through the data Liam had pulled before Derek's arrest. Most of it was exactly what they expected, threatening emails to Arya, encrypted files, communication with other victims. But buried in the metadata of one email, Liam found something, a forwarded message sent from Derek to an address Liam didn't recognize. Who's that? Arya asked, leaning over his shoulder. I don't know yet. Liam ran a trace on the email address. It bounced through several servers before dead-ending at a VPN. Whoever owned it knew how to cover their tracks. Can you get past it? Maybe. It'll take time. Arya sat back, rubbing her temples. This is insane. I just wanted my life back. You'll get it, Liam said. But first we have to make sure no one else can take it away. She looked at him, exhaustion and frustration etched into every line of her face. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do. That's not an answer. Liam hesitated. He could give her the safe response, the one that kept his walls intact. But sitting here, in her apartment, with her looking at him like he was the only person in the world she could trust, the walls didn't feel as necessary. Because I know what it's like to feel powerless, he said quietly. And I don't want that for you. Arya's expression softened. She reached out, her hand brushing against his. Thank you. He didn't pull away. Over the next few days, Liam worked the problem from every angle. He set up alerts on Arya's accounts, monitored her network traffic, and started digging into Derek's known associates. The mysterious email address stayed just out of reach, taunting him. Sophie noticed he was distracted. She asked about it over breakfast on Saturday, her cereal going soggy in the bowl while she watched him frown at his laptop. Daddy, are you in trouble? No, Bug. Just working on something. Is it for Miss Arya? He looked up, surprised. Why do you ask that? Sophie shrugged, swirling her spoon through the milk. You're always talking to her now, and you smile more when she's around. Kids. They saw everything. Yeah, he admitted. I'm helping her with something. Is she in trouble? She was, but she's okay now. Sophie considered this, then nodded. Good. I like her. Yeah, Liam said, closing his laptop. Me too. That afternoon, Arya invited them over for lunch. Sophie was thrilled, bouncing around the apartment while Liam tried to wrangle her into shoes. By the time they got across the hall, Arya had set up a makeshift picnic on her living room floor. Sandwiches, juice boxes, a bag of chips. This is amazing, Sophie declared, plopping down on the blanket. Arya grinned. I'm glad you approve. They ate and talked and laughed. And for a little while, Liam let himself forget about the phone calls and the email address and the creeping sense that something worse was coming. Sophie chattered about school, Arya told stories about her disastrous attempts at cooking, and Liam just listened, feeling something warm and unfamiliar settle in his chest. After lunch, Sophie sprawled out on the couch with her tablet, and Arya and Liam moved to the kitchen under the pretense of cleaning up. She's great, Arya said, scraping crumbs into the trash. She has her moments. You're good with her, Liam shrugged. I'm doing my best. It shows. He glanced at her, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. Thanks. They worked in silence for a moment, then Arya spoke again, quieter this time. Can I ask you something? Sure. What happened with Sophie's mom? Liam tensed, his hands stilling on the dish he was drying. He didn't talk about this, ever. But Arya had trusted him with her darkest moment. Maybe he owed her the same. She left, he said simply. 3 years ago, just packed her stuff and walked out. Did she say why? She left a note. Said she couldn't do it anymore. Being a mom, being with me, any of it. She needed space to figure out who she was. He set the dish down, his jaw tight. I haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. Arya studied him. You really believe that? Most days? He met her eyes. Sophie doesn't remember much about her. I think that's for the best. And you? I remember enough. Arya reached out, her hand covering his. For what it's worth, I think she made a huge mistake. Liam didn't know what to say to that, so he just squeezed her hand and let the moment sit. On Monday, the second call came. Liam was walking Sophie to the bus stop when his phone buzzed. Same unknown number. He let it go to voicemail, but when he checked it later, there was a message. The distorted voice again. You're not as smart as you think, and you're running out of time. That was it. No details, no demands, just a threat hanging in the air. Liam forwarded the recording to a buddy of his, a guy he'd gone to college with who now worked in cybersecurity. If anyone could trace the call, it was him. The response came back within an hour. Burner phone. Routed through 3 different towers. Whoever this is, they know what they're doing. Great. Liam sat at his desk, staring at the screen, frustration gnawing at him. He was good at what he did, but this was beyond his usual scope. He fixed computers, recovered lost files, debugged code. He wasn't a detective, but he couldn't stop now. Not when Arya was still at risk. Not when Sophie could become collateral damage. He pulled up the email chain again, the one Derek had forwarded. There had to be something he'd missed. He ran it through every tool he had, metadata scrapers, IP trackers, domain registries. And then, buried in the header information, he found it. A timestamp that didn't match the others. A millisecond discrepancy that suggested the email had been routed through a relay server before being sent. He traced the server. It led to a hosting company based overseas, one known for catering to clients who valued privacy over legality. Liam leaned back, a grim smile tugging at his lips. It wasn't much, but it was a thread, and threads could be pulled. Set. By Wednesday, Liam had a name. It had taken 3 sleepless nights, more caffeine than was probably healthy, and a favor called in from another contact who owed him. But he had it. Marcus Treadwell, 46. Former executive at a venture capital firm, currently under investigation for fraud and embezzlement, though nothing had stuck. He had a reputation for buying dirt on people and using it to manipulate deals in his favor. Derek had been one of his contractors. Liam showed Arya the file that evening. She read through it, her expression hardening with every line. So Derek was just a pawn, she said. Looks like it. Treadwell was the one pulling the strings, and now he's coming after us because we took Derek down. That's my guess? Arya set the file down, her hands shaking slightly. What does he want? Same thing Derek wanted. Leverage, control. He probably thinks we know more than we do. Do we? Not yet, but we're about to. She looked at him. What are you planning? I'm going to find out what Treadwell's hiding, and then I'm going to make sure he can't use it. Liam, this guy sounds dangerous. So was Derek. Derek was an opportunist. This guy's a predator. Liam met her eyes. Then we'd better not give him an opening. The plan took shape over the next few days. Liam reached out to his contact in cybersecurity, asked for intel on Treadwell's digital footprint. Turns out the guy had enemies. Lots of them. Former business partners, whistleblowers, even a few journalists who'd tried and failed to expose him. One of those journalists, a woman named Claire Dawson, agreed to talk. They met at a coffee shop in the city, far enough from Liam's neighborhood that he didn't have to worry about being followed. Claire was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of weariness that came from chasing stories no one wanted to publish. You're the one who took down Derek Hale, she said, stirring her coffee. I helped. Don't be modest. Derek was Treadwell's favorite attack dog. You neutered him. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Claire smiled faintly. Sometimes they're the same thing. She leaned forward. What do you want to know? Everything. Who is Treadwell? What's he after? And how do I stop him? Claire sighed. Treadwell's been operating in the shadows for years. He targets people with something to lose, executives, politicians, anyone with a secret worth exploiting. He uses contractors like Derek to do the dirty work, keeps his hands clean. What's his endgame? Power, money, sometimes both. He's built an empire on blackmail and coercion. And the worst part? He's good at it. No one's been able to touch him. Why not? Because everyone who tries ends up compromised. He's always 3 steps ahead. Liam absorbed that. So what's his weakness? Claire hesitated. His arrogance? He thinks he's untouchable, and that makes him careless. Careless how? He keeps records. Insurance, he calls it. Proof of every deal, every transaction, every piece of dirt he's collected. If you could get access to those records, you'd have everything you need to bury him. Where does he keep them? That's the million-dollar question. I've been trying to find out for 2 years. Liam thought for a moment. What if I told you I might have a way in? Claire's eyes sharpened. I'd say you're either brilliant or insane. Probably both. The next step was risky. Liam knew that. But he didn't see another option. He created a fake identity, a disgruntled former employee of a tech company Treadwell had targeted, someone with a grudge and information to sell. Then he reached out through a dark web forum known for brokering deals between people like Treadwell and people like his fictional persona. The bait was simple: proprietary data on a company Treadwell was currently circling. Enough to make him interested, not enough to make him suspicious. It took 2 days for Treadwell to bite. The message came through encrypted channels. Let's talk. Prove you have what you claim. Liam sent a sample, fabricated but convincing. He'd spent hours making it look real, pulling together publicly available information and dressing it up as insider knowledge. Treadwell's response was quick, impressive. Let's meet. Liam's heart was pounding as he read the message. This was it, the opening he needed. But it also meant putting himself directly in Treadwell's crosshairs. So he told Arya that night. She didn't take it well. Are you out of your mind? She said, her voice rising. You're going to meet with him? Alone? I won't be alone. Claire's setting up surveillance, and I'll have a backup plan. A backup plan? Liam, this isn't a computer you're debugging. This is a man who's ruined lives. I know. Then why are you doing this? Because if I don't, he'll keep coming. For you, for me, maybe even for Sophie. That stopped her. She stared at him, anger and fear warring in her expression. You can't put yourself at risk like this, she said quietly. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. We go to the police. We tell them everything. And say what? That a guy called me with a distorted voice and made vague threats? They can't do anything without evidence. And by the time we get evidence, it'll be too late. Arya looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't, because she knew he was right. I hate this, she said finally. Yeah, Liam said. Me too. She stepped closer, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. And promise me you'll come back. He covered her hand with his. I promise. The meeting was set for Friday night. A bar downtown, public but not too crowded. Liam arrived early, scoped the place out, and took a seat in the back corner where he could see the door. Claire was across the street in a van with recording equipment. She tapped into the bar's security cameras and was feeding the footage to Liam's phone. If anything went wrong, she'd call the cops. Treadwell walked in at exactly 9 p.m. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Liam's car. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. He spotted Liam and walked over, sliding into the seat across from him. You're younger than I expected, Treadwell said, his voice smooth. You're exactly what I expected, Liam replied. Treadwell smiled. Flattery won't get you anywhere. Let's talk business. Fine by me. They talked for 20 minutes. Liam played his part perfectly, disgruntled, desperate, willing to sell out his former employer for the right price. Treadwell ate it up, asking pointed questions, testing Liam's knowledge. And then, just as Liam was starting to think he might actually pull this off, Treadwell leaned back and said, You're lying. Liam's stomach dropped. Excuse me? You're not who you say you are, and this data you're selling, it's fake. I don't know what you're talking about. Treadwell's smile didn't waver. Yes, you do. You're the one who helped Arya Bennett, the one who took down Derek. Liam didn't move, didn't blink. I think you have me confused with someone else. I don't think so. Treadwell leaned forward, his voice dropping. You made a mistake coming here. Did I? You think you're clever, setting up surveillance, bringing backup, but you're out of your depth. Liam met his eyes. Maybe. Or maybe you're the one who's out of his depth. Treadwell's smile faltered, just for a second. And that's when Liam played his card. I know about your insurance files, he said, and I know where they are. It was a bluff. A complete, desperate bluff. But Liam had learned one thing from all of this. Arrogance left cracks. And Treadwell's arrogance was a canyon. Treadwell's expression shifted. You're bluffing. Am I? For a long moment they stared at each other. Then Treadwell stood. This isn't over, he said. No, Liam agreed. It's not. Treadwell walked out, and Liam sat there, his heart hammering in his chest. Claire's voice crackled in his earpiece. What the hell was that? A gamble, Liam said. Did it work? I guess we'll find out. He didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Liam's laptop flagged an intrusion attempt. Someone was trying to hack into his system. He traced the IP address and wasn't surprised to find it led back to one of Treadwell's known servers. Treadwell was rattled. Good. Liam spent the day fortifying his defenses and setting traps. If Treadwell wanted a digital war, Liam would give him one. But he also knew this couldn't go on forever. Sooner or later, one of them would make a mistake, and Liam couldn't afford for it to be him. That night, Arya came over. Sophie was at a friend's house for a sleepover, so it was just the two of them. You look terrible, Arya said, handing him a cup of coffee. Thanks. What happened with Treadwell? Liam told her. All of it. When he finished, Arya was silent for a long moment. You're insane, she said finally. You've mentioned that. But you're also incredible. He looked at her, surprised. She stepped closer, her hand coming up to cup his face. I don't know how to thank you for this. You don't have to. She kissed him. It wasn't desperate or frantic. It was soft, deliberate, like she'd been thinking about it for a while and finally decided to stop overthinking. When she pulled back, Liam was stunned. I've wanted to do that for a while, she said. Yeah? Yeah. He pulled her back in, and this time neither of them pulled away. When Arya finally left his apartment that night, Liam stood in the doorway watching her cross the hall, and for the first time in years he felt something other than exhaustion or resignation. It was something lighter, something that made his chest feel too small and too full at the same time. He didn't have a name for it, and he wasn't sure he wanted one. Naming things made them real, and real things could be lost. He closed the door and leaned against it, running a hand through his hair. His laptop was still open on the desk, the intrusion alert still blinking in the corner of the screen. Treadwell hadn't given up. If anything, the failed hacking attempt was just the beginning. Liam walked over, sat down, and started reviewing the logs. Treadwell's team had tried to brute force their way through his firewall, then switched to a phishing probe, then what looked like a social engineering attempt disguised as a system update notification. Amateur moves wrapped in professional packaging. Whoever Treadwell had hired wasn't as good as Derek had been, which meant they were dangerous in a different way. Sloppy, unpredictable, likely to make mistakes that could blow back on everyone involved. He set up additional monitoring protocols, rerouted his network through 3 different VPNs, and created a honeypot, a fake vulnerability designed to lure attackers into a controlled environment where he could watch what they were doing. It was tedious work, the kind that required focus and patience, but it kept his mind off the fact that he'd just kissed Aria Bennett and had no idea what happened next. By the time he finished, it was past 2 in the morning. He crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, replaying the kiss in his head until sleep finally pulled him under. He woke to Sophie jumping on his bed at 7:30. Her hair a tangled mess, and her smile wide enough to split her face. "Daddy, you're still sleeping," she announced, like this was a scandal. "Not anymore," he muttered, squinting at her. "Mrs. Chen brought me home. She said I ate 4 pancakes." "4?" "Yep, and I helped make them." "Good for you, Bug." She flopped down beside him, her head on his shoulder. "Can Miss Aria come over today?" Liam's stomach did a weird flip. "I don't know. She might be busy." "You should ask." "Maybe later." Sophie tilted her head to look up at him. "Do you like her?" "What kind of question is that?" "A normal one." "Do you?" Liam sighed. There was no point lying to a 7-year-old who already knew the answer. "Yeah, Bug, I do." Sophie grinned. "Good. Me too." She scrambled off the bed and ran to the kitchen, leaving Liam alone with his thoughts and the lingering smell of syrup on her pajamas. He got up, made coffee, and checked his phone. There was a message from Aria, sent 20 minutes ago. "Morning. Coffee later?" He typed back. "Sure. My place or yours?" Her response was immediate. "Yours. I'll bring donuts." Liam smiled despite himself. Sophie was delighted when Aria showed up an hour later with a box of glazed donuts and a grin that matched the kids' energy. They sat at the kitchen table, Sophie chattering about her sleepover while Aria listened like it was the most fascinating story she'd ever heard. Liam watched them, sipping his coffee, and felt that too full feeling in his chest again. When Sophie finally ran off to her room to play, Aria turned to him, her expression shifting. "So," she said, "about last night?" "Yeah. I don't regret it." "Good. Me neither." She smiled, but there was uncertainty behind it. "I just don't want to make things complicated. You've got Sophie, and I've got my life finally getting back on track, and I don't want to mess that up." "You won't." "You don't know that. Neither do you." Aria laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're annoyingly reasonable, you know that?" "I've been told." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "I like you, Liam. A lot. But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of screwing this up. Of dragging you into more of my mess. Of losing you before I even really have you." Liam turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm choosing to be here." "Why?" "Because I want to be." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's just see where this goes." Liam squeezed her hand. "Sounds like a plan." They sat there for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. It was easy, comfortable, and for someone who'd spent the last 3 years keeping everyone at arm's length, easy felt like a minor miracle. But the peace didn't last long. That afternoon, while Aria was back in her apartment and Sophie was watching cartoons, Liam's honeypot triggered. Someone had taken the bait. He pulled up the logs and watched as the intruder navigated through the fake system, poking around, trying to find something valuable. Liam tracked their movements, noting the patterns. Whoever this was, they were methodical, but not creative. They followed a script, checking the same places anyone would look for sensitive data: documents folder, downloads, email archives. When they didn't find anything, they started getting frustrated. Liam could tell by the way their commands grew more erratic, more aggressive. Then they made a mistake. They tried to deploy a keylogger, a piece of malware designed to record everything Liam typed. But because they were in the honeypot, the malware installed on a sandboxed virtual machine instead of his actual system. And in doing so, it pinged back to its command server, giving Liam the IP address of whoever was controlling it. He traced the IP. It led to a server farm in Eastern Europe, one known for hosting questionable operations. But buried in the metadata was something more useful, a timestamp that matched activity on a forum Treadwell's people were known to use. Liam sat back, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Treadwell was escalating, but he was also getting sloppy, and sloppy meant vulnerable. He called Claire. "You got something?" she asked, her voice sharp with anticipation. "Maybe. Treadwell's people just tried to hack me. I traced it back to a server that's been linked to his operations before." "That's good. What do you need?" "Access to his communications. If I can get into that server, I can see who he's talking to, what he's planning." "That's a big ask, Liam." "I know. But it's the only way we're going to get ahead of this." Claire was silent for a moment. "Let me make some calls. I might know someone who can help." "Thanks." "Don't thank me yet. This could blow up in our faces." "It already has. Now we're just trying to contain the damage." Claire laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You're either the bravest guy I've ever met or the dumbest." "I'll take either at this point." She hung up, and Liam went back to monitoring the honeypot. The intruder had given up and logged off, but he knew they'd be back. People like Treadwell didn't quit. They regrouped, adapted, came at you from a different angle. He just had to be ready when they did. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Liam sat on the couch with his laptop, running through scenarios. If he could get into Treadwell's server, what would he find? Communications, probably. Financial records. Maybe even the insurance files Claire had mentioned. The dirt Treadwell had collected on everyone he'd ever targeted. But getting in wouldn't be easy. Treadwell's security was top tier, layers of encryption and authentication that would take weeks to crack. Liam didn't have weeks. He barely had days. A knock on the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He opened it to find Arya standing there, wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Something like that." She stepped inside, glancing at the laptop on the couch. "Still working?" "Always." She sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You need to take a break." "I will, once this is over." "And when will that be?" "I don't know." She reached over, closing the laptop. "Then take a break now." Liam looked at her, ready to argue, but the expression on her face stopped him. She wasn't being pushy or demanding. She was worried. "Okay," he said. They sat there in silence for a while, the TV playing some late-night talk show neither of them was watching. Arya leaned her head on his shoulder, and Liam let himself relax, just a little. "I keep thinking about what you said," Arya murmured, "about choosing to be here." "Yeah? No one's ever chosen me before, not like that." Liam frowned. "That's hard to believe." "It's true. People stick around because it's convenient, or because they want something, or because leaving would be too much work. But you? You didn't have to help me. You didn't owe me anything, and you did it anyway. You make it sound more noble than it is. Maybe. Or maybe you just don't see yourself clearly." Liam didn't know what to say to that, so he just put his arm around her and let the silence stretch. Eventually, Arya fell asleep, her breathing evening out, her weight warm and solid against his side. Liam stayed awake, staring at the TV without seeing it, his mind already spinning back to the problem at hand. Treadwell wasn't going to stop, and the longer this dragged on, the more danger Arya was in. The more danger Sophie was in. He had to end this. Soon. The next morning, Claire called. "I got you a way in," she said without preamble. "Seriously? Don't get too excited. It's not a free pass. You'll have about 30 minutes before their security systems catch on and lock you out. Maybe less." "That's enough." "You sure? Because if you screw this up, Treadwell's going to know someone's coming after him, and he'll shut everything down." "I won't screw it up," Claire sighed. "I'm sending you the access credentials now. Use them wisely." "I will. And Claire, thank you. Just don't make me regret this." She hung up, and a minute later, an encrypted email landed in Liam's inbox. He opened it, scanned the credentials, and felt his pulse kick up. This was it. His shot at getting inside Treadwell's operation and finding the leverage he needed to shut the man down for good. He waited until Sophie left for school, then set up his workspace. Triple-checked his VPNs, activated his monitoring tools, made sure every possible precaution was in place. Then he logged in. The server interface was clean, professional, exactly what he'd expected. He navigated through the directory structure, moving quickly but carefully, looking for anything that screamed insurance files or leverage. It took him 15 minutes to find the folder. It was buried deep, encrypted with a passphrase, but the encryption was old, outdated by at least 2 years. Liam's decryption tools cracked it in under a minute. Inside were hundreds of files, documents, photos, audio recordings, each one labeled with initials and dates. Liam scanned through them, his stomach sinking with every new file he opened. Treadwell had dirt on everyone. Politicians, executives, journalists, even a few law enforcement officials. Some of it was financial, evidence of bribes, embezzlement, fraud. Some of it was personal, affairs, addictions, secrets people would do anything to keep hidden. And right there, in the middle of it all, was a folder labeled A.B. Aria Bennett. Liam opened it, and his blood ran cold. There were dozens of files, everything Derek had collected, plus more. Photos, emails, financial records, but there was also something new, something Derek had never shown Aria. A video. Liam's hand hovered over the mouse. He didn't want to open it, didn't want to see whatever fresh hell Treadwell had been holding over her. But he had to know. He clicked. The video was grainy, shot from a security camera. It showed Aria in an office, late at night, alone. She was at a desk, typing on a computer. The timestamp was from 8 months ago. At first, Liam didn't understand what he was looking at. Then he saw it. Aria was copying files, proprietary files, client data, and she was transferring them to an external drive. The video ended. Liam sat there, staring at the screen, his mind racing. Aria had stolen data from her own company. He didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to think that the woman he'd been helping, the woman he'd kissed, the woman Sophie adored, had been lying to him this whole time. But the evidence was right there, undeniable. He closed the video, his chest tight. He needed to think, needed to figure out what this meant, what he was supposed to do with it. But before he could process any of that, an alert flashed on his screen. Treadwell's security system had detected the intrusion. Liam had maybe 2 minutes before they locked him out. He grabbed everything he could, copied the entire folder, including the video, and started the upload to his secure drive. The progress bar crawled across the screen, agonizingly slow. 1 minute left. The upload hit 70%, 30 seconds, 85%. The screen flashed red, access denied. But the upload finished, 100%. Liam logged out, wiped his tracks, and disconnected. His hands were shaking. He'd gotten what he needed. But now he had a whole new problem. That afternoon, Aria came over. She was smiling, holding a bag of takeout, acting like everything was normal. "I thought we could have lunch," she said. "Sophie's at school and you've been working nonstop. You need to eat." Liam stepped aside, letting her in. His stomach was churning. They sat at the kitchen table, unpacking containers of noodles and spring rolls. Aria talked about her day, about a meeting that had gone well, about a coworker who'd annoyed her. Liam barely heard any of it. "You okay?" she asked, noticing his silence. "Yeah, just tired." "You sure? You seem off." He looked at her, this woman he'd trusted, this woman he'd risked everything for, and he didn't know what to believe anymore. "Aria," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something, okay? And I need you to be honest with me." Her smile faded. "What's going on? 8 months ago. Did you take data from your company?" The color drained from her face. "How do you—" She stopped, her eyes widening. "You got into Treadwell's files. Did you do it?" She didn't answer right away, just sat there, staring at him, her expression unreadable. "Yes," she said finally. "I did." Liam felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Why?" Aria's hands were trembling. She set down her chopsticks, clasped them together in her lap. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. She took a shaky breath. The company I work for, they were covering up fraud. One of the senior partners was embezzling client funds, cooking the books to hide it. I found out by accident, and when I tried to report it internally, they threatened me. Said if I went public, they'd destroy my career. So you stole the evidence. I copied it. I was going to take it to a lawyer, someone who could help me blow the whistle without getting buried. But before I could, Derek hacked my accounts and found the files. He saw what I had and realized it was valuable. That's when he started blackmailing me. Liam leaned back, processing. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't know if you'd believe me. Or if you'd think I was just making excuses. Her voice broke. And because I was ashamed. I broke the law, Liam. Even if it was for the right reasons, I still did it. He looked at her, saw the tears welling in her eyes, the fear and the guilt etched into every line of her face. Do you still have the files? He asked. Yes, on an encrypted drive. I've been too scared to do anything with them. Liam stood, started pacing. His mind was spinning, trying to fit all the pieces together. Treadwell has the video of you taking the files, he said. That's what he's been holding over you. That's his real leverage. I know. If he releases it, you'll be arrested. Doesn't matter why you did it. I know that too. Liam stopped pacing, turned to face her. Then we use it. Arya blinked. What? We use the evidence you stole. We go public with it, expose the fraud, blow the whole thing open. If we do it right, you won't be the criminal. You'll be the whistleblower. Liam, that's insane. Treadwell will come after us even harder. He's already coming after us. At least this way we're fighting back. She stared at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. You really think that could work? I think it's our best shot. Arya was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, let's do it. Liam called Claire that night, laid out the plan. She was skeptical at first, but when he explained what Arya had and what it could prove, she came around. This could be huge, Claire said. If the fraud is as bad as she says, it'll blow up the whole company. And bury Treadwell in the process, Liam added. He's been using that video to blackmail her. Once it's public, it loses its power. You'll need a lawyer, a good one, and you'll need to coordinate the release carefully. If you screw this up, Arya goes to jail and Treadwell walks. I know. That's why I need your help. Claire sighed. You're asking a lot. I know. Fine. I'll set up a meeting with a lawyer I trust. But Liam, this is a one-shot deal. If it doesn't work, there's no coming back from it. I understand. She hung up, and Liam sat there, staring at his phone. This was it. The end game. Everything they'd been working toward came down to this. He just hoped they were ready. The lawyer's office was in a building downtown that smelled like old coffee and stress. Claire had set up the meeting for the following afternoon, which meant Liam had less than 18 hours to prepare Arya for what was coming and to make sure Sophie didn't notice that her dad was about to blow up someone's entire world. He picked Sophie up from school that day and took her for ice cream, even though it was a Tuesday, and ice cream was usually reserved for weekends. She looked at him with suspicion while she licked her chocolate cone. Are you sick? She asked. No, why? Because you're being weird. Liam laughed despite himself. I can't buy my kid ice cream without being weird? Not on a Tuesday. Well, maybe I'm just in a good mood. Sophie considered this, then shrugged. Okay, can Miss Arya come over tonight? Not tonight, Bug. She's got some stuff to take care of. Important stuff? Yeah, important stuff. Sophie nodded seriously, like she understood the weight of important adult business. Then she went back to her ice cream, and Liam sat there watching her, trying not to think about what would happen if this all went sideways. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Arya came over with her encrypted drive. Her hands were shaking when she handed it to Liam. This is everything, she said. Emails, financial records, internal memos, proof that the senior partner was siphoning money from client accounts and falsifying reports to cover it up. Liam plugged the drive into his laptop and started reviewing the files. It took him an hour to go through it all, but by the end, he understood why Arya had been so desperate to protect this information. The fraud was massive. Millions of dollars, dozens of clients, and a paper trail that led straight to the top of the company. This is solid, he said finally. If we present this right, you're not just a whistleblower, you're a hero. Arya didn't look convinced. Or I'm a thief who gets thrown in jail while the people I'm trying to expose hire expensive lawyers and walk away clean. That's why we need the lawyer Claire recommended. Someone who knows how to navigate this. And you trust her? I trust Claire. And if Claire trusts this lawyer, that's good enough for me. Arya sat down on the couch, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm terrified, Liam. I know. What if this doesn't work? What if Treadwell releases that video anyway? What if... Hey! Liam sat down beside her, taking her hand. We've come this far. We're not stopping now. She looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. Why are you doing this? Really? Because it's the right thing to do. That's not enough. People don't risk everything for strangers just because it's right. Liam was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. You're not a stranger anymore. What am I then? He met her eyes. Someone I care about, someone I want to protect. Arya's breath hitched, and she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do. They sat like that for a while, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. Eventually, Arya pulled back, wiping her eyes. Okay, she said, let's do this. The next afternoon, they met with the lawyer. Her name was Margaret Reese, and she was in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put Liam at ease. Claire had briefed her ahead of time, so she already knew the basics. Margaret listened while Arya explained everything: the fraud, the theft, Derek's blackmail, Treadwell's threats. She didn't interrupt, just took notes in a leather-bound notebook, her expression unreadable. When Arya finished, Margaret set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. This is messy, she said bluntly, but it's not impossible. What do we need to do? Liam asked. First, we need to get ahead of the narrative. If Treadwell releases that video before we go public, Arya looks like a criminal. But if we release the fraud evidence first and frame Arya as a whistleblower who is targeted for trying to do the right thing, then the video becomes part of the story. Proof that powerful people were trying to silence her. How do we control the timing? Arya asked. We don't. Not entirely, but we can stack the deck in our favor. Margaret pulled out a folder, flipping through documents. I'll file a formal complaint with the Securities Commission and coordinate with a journalist I know who specializes in corporate fraud. We'll release everything at once: the complaint, the evidence, and Arya's statement. By the time Treadwell realizes what's happening, it'll be too late for him to spin it. And what about the video? Liam asked. We address it head on. Arya admits she took the files, explains why, and positions herself as someone who had no other choice. It's not perfect, but it's defensible. Arya's voice was small. Will I go to jail? Margaret's expression softened, just a fraction. I can't promise you won't face charges, but if we do this right, I think we can get you immunity in exchange for your cooperation. You're not the villain here. The people who committed the fraud are. Okay, Arya said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. Margaret turned to Liam. And you? What's your role in all this? I'm just helping. You're more than that. You broke into Treadwell's server. Liam didn't flinch. I did. That's illegal. I know. Margaret studied him for a long moment. If this goes to court, that could be a problem. Then we make sure it doesn't go to court. She raised an eyebrow. You're confident. I'm motivated. Margaret smiled faintly. All right, let's get to work. Over the next 3 days, Liam barely slept. He worked with Margaret and Claire to assemble the evidence, organize the documents, and draft Arya's statement. Arya practiced her story over and over, refining the details, making sure everything was airtight. Sophie noticed something was going on. She didn't ask directly, but she stuck closer to Liam than usual, watching him with those too perceptive eyes. Are you in trouble, Daddy? She asked one night while he was tucking her in. No, Bug, I'm not in trouble. Is Miss Arya? Liam hesitated. She's dealing with some hard stuff, but we're helping her. Is that why you're so tired? Yeah, that's why. Sophie reached up and patted his cheek, her small hand warm. You should sleep more. You look like a zombie. Liam laughed. Thanks, Bug. I'm just being honest. I know, and I appreciate it. She snuggled under her blanket, the turtle nightlight casting stars across her ceiling. Daddy? Yeah? I think you're doing a good job with the hard stuff. Liam's chest tightened. Thanks, kiddo. You're welcome. He kissed her forehead and left the room, closing the door softly behind him. When he got back to the living room, Arya was waiting, her laptop open on the coffee table. Margaret just sent the final draft of the complaint, she said. She wants us to review it one more time before she files. Liam sat down beside her, and they went through the document together, line by line. It was thorough, methodical, and damning. If this didn't take down the people responsible for the fraud, nothing would. This is it, Arya said quietly. Once she files this, there's no going back. You ready? She nodded, though her hands were shaking. Yeah, I'm ready. Liam sent Margaret the approval, and she confirmed receipt within minutes. The complaint would be filed first thing in the morning, and the journalist would publish the story simultaneously. By noon tomorrow, the whole thing would be public, which meant they had one more night before everything exploded. Arya didn't go back to her apartment that night. She stayed with Liam, curled up on the couch while he worked at his desk, monitoring Treadwell's activity. There hadn't been any new intrusion attempts since he'd gotten into the server, but Liam knew better than to assume that meant Treadwell had backed off. More likely, he was regrouping, planning his next move. Around midnight, Liam's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered, already knowing what he'd hear. The distorted voice came through, colder than before. You made a mistake. Yeah? Which one? Thinking you could outmaneuver me. Funny, I was about to say the same thing about you. There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time there was an edge to it. Anger, maybe, or fear. You have no idea what you're messing with. I have a pretty good idea, actually, and tomorrow, so will everyone else. Another pause, longer this time. If you go through with this, I'll destroy you. Both of you. You can try. The line went dead. Liam set the phone down, his pulse pounding. Arya was sitting up now, her face pale. That was him, wasn't it? Yeah. He knows. He suspects, but he doesn't know the details, not yet. Liam, what if he comes after Sophie? Liam had already thought of that. I'm taking her to stay with a friend tomorrow, someone he doesn't know about. She'll be safe. Are you sure? Yes. Arya looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just nodded, trusting him. The next morning came too fast. Liam dropped Sophie off at his buddy's place, a guy he'd known since college who lived across town and owed him a favor. Sophie was confused but excited, treating it like an adventure. Liam didn't tell her the truth, just said he had some work stuff to take care of and he'd pick her up in a day or two. By the time he got back to his apartment, the complaint had been filed and the article was live. Claire called 10 minutes later. It's blowing up. The story's everywhere. Good. Arya's phone is going to start ringing any minute. So is yours. Are you ready for that? As ready as we'll ever be. All right, stay close to Margaret. She'll handle the legal side. I'll manage the press. Thanks, Claire. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. She was right. Within an hour, Arya's phone was flooded with calls, reporters, colleagues, people she hadn't spoken to in years. Margaret had instructed her not to answer any of them, to let the lawyer handle all communication. But that didn't stop the messages from piling up. Liam's phone was quieter, but he still got a few calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. By midday, the story had hit the major news outlets. The fraud was the headline, but Arya's role as the whistleblower was the human interest angle. Some outlets painted her as a hero, others questioned her methods. A few called for her arrest. Margaret had anticipated all of it. She released a statement on Arya's behalf, framing her actions as a desperate last resort in the face of corporate corruption and retaliation. It didn't silence the critics, but it shifted the narrative enough to buy them time. And then, just after 2 p.m., Treadwell made his move. The video dropped on a fringe news site known for publishing leaks and conspiracy theories. It was the security footage of Arya taking the files, edited to remove all context, accompanied by a headline that screamed, "Whistleblower or thief, the truth about Arya Bennett." Liam's stomach sank when he saw it. Arya was sitting beside him, and when she read the headline, her face went white. "He did it," she whispered. "He actually did it." "Yeah, but we knew he would." "It doesn't matter. Look at the comments. People are calling me a criminal." Liam scanned the comments section. She was right. The narrative was already splitting, people taking sides, arguing over whether Arya was a whistleblower or an opportunist who'd gotten caught. "We stick to the plan," Liam said. "Margaret's already drafting a response." "What if it's not enough?" "It will be." But even as he said it, Liam wasn't entirely sure he believed it. Margaret's response came 2 hours later. It was a masterclass in damage control, acknowledging the video, explaining the context, and pivoting back to the fraud. She didn't deny that Arya had taken the files. Instead, she reframed it as an act of courage in the face of institutional failure. The response didn't kill the controversy, but it slowed the bleeding. And by the end of the day, the focus had shifted back to the fraud itself and the senior partner who'd orchestrated it. That night, Arya collapsed on Liam's couch, utterly spent. "I can't do this," she said. "I can't keep fighting." "Yes, you can." "How do you know?" "Because you've been fighting this whole time. You just didn't realize it." She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "What if it's not enough? What if I lose everything?" Liam sat down beside her, pulling her into his arms. "Then we'll figure it out, together." She cried into his shoulder, and he held her, feeling the weight of everything they'd been through pressing down on both of them. But even in the middle of the chaos, even with the whole world watching and waiting to see what would happen next, Liam felt something solid beneath the fear, something that felt a lot like hope. The next morning, the Securities Commission announced an official investigation into the fraud allegations. The senior partner at Arya's company was placed on administrative leave, and the firm released a statement promising full cooperation with authorities. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but it was progress. Margaret called that afternoon with more news. The prosecutor's office reached out. They're willing to discuss immunity for Arya in exchange for her testimony. "That's good, right?" Liam asked. "It's very good. It means they believe her, and it means they think they can make a case." Arya's relief was palpable. "So I'm not going to jail?" "Not if we play this right, but you'll need to cooperate fully, answer their questions, provide documentation, testify if it goes to trial." "I can do that?" "Good. I'll set up a meeting for next week." When Margaret hung up, Arya turned to Liam, her eyes bright with tears. "It's really happening," she said. "We're actually going to win." "Yeah," Liam said, pulling her close. "We are." But even as he said it, his phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He answered, and the distorted voice came through one last time. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. You think you've won, but you've only made things worse, for both of you." "I'll take my chances." The line went dead. Liam set the phone down, his jaw tight. Treadwell wasn't done. He was cornered, desperate, and dangerous, which meant the next move was going to be his most reckless. And Liam had to be ready. That night, after Arya had gone back to her apartment to try and get some sleep, Liam sat at his desk and went through Treadwell's files one more time. There had to be something he'd missed, some weakness he could exploit. And then he found it. Buried in the communications logs was an email thread between Treadwell and a lawyer. They were discussing a shell company Treadwell had set up to hide assets, money he'd skimmed from his blackmail operations, funneled through offshore accounts. It was illegal, and it was exactly the kind of thing that could bring Treadwell down. Liam forwarded the information to Claire and Margaret, then sat back, exhaling slowly. This was it. The final piece. Tomorrow they'd hand it over to the authorities, and then Treadwell would have nowhere left to run. For the first time in weeks, Liam let himself believe they might actually pull this off. Morning came with gray clouds and the kind of cold that seeped through windows and settled into bones. Liam stood in his kitchen making coffee, watching the sky darken, knowing that today would be the day everything either came together or fell apart completely. Margaret had scheduled a meeting with the federal prosecutor for noon, and Claire had confirmed that 2 major news outlets were preparing follow-up stories on Treadwell's shell companies and hidden assets. The walls were closing in on him from every direction, but cornered animals were the most dangerous. Liam's phone rang just after 8. It was Margaret. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "Treadwell's lawyer just filed a motion claiming that the evidence against him was obtained illegally. They're arguing that everything you pulled from his server is inadmissible." Liam's stomach dropped. "Can they do that?" "They can try, and if they succeed, we lose our best ammunition against him." "What about the fraud case? That's all Arya's evidence. Nothing to do with what I found. The fraud case is solid, but without the information on Treadwell's financial crimes, he walks away clean. He might lose Derek, might lose some business contacts, but he doesn't go to jail. And he'll still have enough leverage left to come after both of you. Liam set his coffee down, his mind racing. What do we need to do? The prosecutor wants to meet with you, today, before the scheduled meeting with Arya. They want to understand exactly how you obtained the files, and whether there's any legal basis to argue the search was justified. I broke into his server, Margaret. There's no gray area here. Actually, there might be. If you can demonstrate that you were acting in defense of an imminent threat, that Treadwell was actively trying to harm Arya, and you had reason to believe he was about to escalate, we might be able to make a necessity defense argument. That's a long shot. It's the only shot we have. Can you be at my office in an hour? I'll be there. He hung up and immediately called his buddy to check on Sophie. She was fine, eating pancakes and watching cartoons, completely oblivious to the fact that her dad was about to sit in a room with federal prosecutors and explain why he'd committed multiple felonies. Arya texted him 20 minutes later. Margaret told me. Are you okay? He typed back. I will be. Focus on your meeting. I'll handle this. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. There was a long pause before she responded. I'm sorry. This is my fault. No, it's Treadwell's fault. We're just cleaning up his mess. I love you. Liam stared at the message, his chest tight. She'd never said that before. Neither had he. And this was possibly the worst timing in the history of bad timing, but it was also true. He typed back, I love you too. We'll get through this. The meeting with the prosecutor was brutal. Liam sat across from a man named Richard Pelletier, who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit and had never smiled in his life. Margaret sat beside Liam, her expression calm and professional, while Pelletier's associate took notes. Walk me through it, Pelletier said. From the beginning. Liam did. He explained the threats, the blackmail, the escalating danger. He talked about the intrusion attempts on his system, the voice-altered phone calls, the fact that Treadwell had already demonstrated he was willing to destroy lives to maintain control. He laid out the timeline, showed the evidence of Treadwell's attacks, and explained why he'd believed that getting into Treadwell's server was the only way to stop him before someone got seriously hurt. When he finished, Pelletier was quiet for a long moment. You understand that what you did was illegal, he said finally. Yes. And you did it anyway? Yes. Why? Liam met his eyes. Because waiting for the legal system to catch up would have given Treadwell time to destroy everything. And because someone I care about was in danger, and I had the ability to help. That's not how the law works, Mr. Carter. I know, but sometimes the law moves too slow for real people with real problems. Pelletier's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He glanced at Margaret. What's your argument here, counselor? Margaret leaned forward. Necessity defense. My client had a reasonable belief that Ms. Bennett was in imminent danger, that law enforcement would not be able to act quickly enough to prevent harm, and that his actions were the least harmful way to neutralize the threat. Under those circumstances, the illegal search becomes defensible. That's a stretch. It's viable. And more importantly, it's true. Pelletier tapped his pen against his notepad, thinking, even if I buy the necessity argument, and I'm not saying I do, there's still the question of whether we can use the evidence. The defense will argue fruit of the poisonous tree. The evidence corroborates a pattern of criminal behavior that was already under investigation, Margaret countered. The fraud case exists independently. The blackmail allegations exist independently. What Mr. Carter found simply connects the dots. Simply, Pelletier repeated, his tone dry. We're not asking you to ignore the law, Margaret said. We're asking you to consider the context. Treadwell is a predator who's been operating unchecked for years. This is your chance to stop him. Pelletier was quiet for another long moment. Then he closed his folder and stood. I need to discuss this with my team. We'll be in touch. When? Liam asked. Soon. It wasn't the answer Liam wanted, but it was the only one he was going to get. They left the prosecutor's office and walked to Margaret's car in silence. Liam felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out everything inside him and left just the shell. What do you think? He asked when they were sitting in the parking garage. I think Pelletier's smart enough to know that letting Treadwell walk would be a disaster. But I also think he's cautious. He won't move unless he's confident he can win. So we wait. We wait. Liam checked his phone. It was almost 11:30. Arya's meeting with the prosecutor was in half an hour. I should go, he said. You can't be there, Liam. They'll want to talk to her alone. I know, but I can wait outside. Margaret studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, but stay out of sight. The last thing we need is someone accusing you of trying to influence her testimony. Liam spent the next 3 hours sitting in his car 2 blocks from the federal building, watching people come and go, his mind running through every possible outcome. Arya could get immunity. She could get charged. Treadwell could walk. Treadwell could go to prison. Liam himself could end up arrested. The uncertainty was worse than anything else. Finally, at 3:15, Arya called. How did it go? Liam asked. They offered me immunity. Relief flooded through him. That's incredible. On the condition that I testify, not just about the fraud, but about everything. Derek, Treadwell, all of it. You can do that. I know, I already agreed. Good. There was a pause, and Liam could hear the exhaustion in her voice when she spoke again. They asked about you. What did you tell them? The truth. That you helped me when no one else would. That you put yourself at risk to protect me. That I wouldn't be here without you. Liam's throat tightened. What did they say? Nothing. They just wrote it down. Arya shit. I know. Whatever happens, we'll deal with it, together. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that. Where are you now? He asked. Still at the federal building. Margaret's finishing up some paperwork. I'm 2 blocks away. I'll wait for you. You don't have to. I want to. She was quiet for a moment. Okay. I'll be out in 10 minutes. It was closer to 20, but when Arya finally emerged from the building, Liam was there. She looked drained, her shoulders slumped, her eyes red-rimmed. But when she saw him, she smiled. He pulled her into a hug and she sagged against him, her face pressed into his shoulder. It's going to be okay, he said quietly. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She pulled back, looking up at him. How do you know? Because we've made it this far. And we're not stopping now. They drove back to the apartment in silence, Arya's hand resting on his knee, Liam's mind still churning through everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. When they got inside, Liam made tea, something Arya had mentioned she liked, but never had the energy to make for herself. They sat on the couch, not talking, just existing in the same space. I need to pick up Sophie tomorrow, Liam said eventually. I know. She's going to have questions. What are you going to tell her? The truth. That we were helping someone who needed it, and that it's over now. Arya looked at him. Is it? Over? The worst of it, yeah. The rest is just paperwork and waiting. And Treadwell? Liam's jaw tightened. He's done. Even if the prosecutor won't use what I found, the fraud case will bury him by association. He's toxic now. No one will work with him. That doesn't mean he won't come after us. If he does, we'll handle it. Arya set her tea down and leaned against him. I don't know how you stay so calm. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it. She laughed softly. That makes 2 of us. They sat like that until the sky outside turned dark, and then Arya went back to her apartment to sleep in her own bed for the first time in days. Liam stayed up, monitoring his systems, watching for any sign that Treadwell was making another move. But the night stayed quiet. The call from Pelletier came 3 days later. Liam was at the park with Sophie, watching her climb on the jungle gym, when his phone rang. Mr. Carter, this is Richard Pelletier. We've made a decision regarding the evidence you obtained. Liam's heart was pounding. And? We're moving forward with charges against Marcus Treadwell. Multiple counts of extortion, wire fraud, and money laundering. The evidence you provided will be included in the case. You're serious. I don't joke about federal charges, Mr. Carter. That said, there will be conditions. What kind of conditions? You'll need to testify about how you obtained the files. You'll be granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation. But if you lie or withhold information, the deal is void. I understand. Good. My office will be in touch to schedule a formal deposition. In the meantime, I'd advise you to stay out of trouble. That's the plan. Pelletier hung up, and Liam stood there in the middle of the park, staring at his phone, barely able to process what he'd just heard. They'd won. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but they'd won. Sophie ran over, her face flushed from running. "Daddy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, Bug. Everything's good. You look weird." "Good weird or bad weird?" "I don't know yet." Liam laughed and scooped her up, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. When he set her down, she looked up at him with those two smart eyes. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. "Yeah, Bug, we can get ice cream." He texted Arya. "It's over. They're charging him. We're clear." Her response came immediately. "Are you serious? Dead serious? Oh my God, meet us at the park. We're celebrating." She showed up 20 minutes later, breathless and smiling wider than Liam had ever seen. Sophie ran to her immediately, and Arya swept her up in a hug. "Miss Arya, we're getting ice cream. I heard. That's amazing." They walked to the ice cream shop together, Sophie chattering between them, holding both their hands. People passing by probably thought they were a family. And maybe, in a way, they were. The trial took 4 months to prepare. Liam testified twice, once in a deposition, once on the stand. He explained what he'd done, why he'd done it, and what he'd found. The defense attorney tried to rattle him, tried to paint him as a vigilante who'd broken the law for personal reasons. But Liam stuck to the facts, stayed calm, and told the truth. Arya testified too. She walked the jury through the fraud, the blackmail, the fear she'd lived with for months. She was poised, articulate, and devastating. By the time she stepped down, there wasn't a person in that courtroom who didn't believe her. Treadwell's lawyer tried to mount a defense, tried to argue that his client was being scapegoated, that the evidence was tainted, that the whole case was built on the actions of criminals and opportunists. It didn't work. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Treadwell was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The senior partner from Arya's company got 8. Derek Hale, who'd cut a deal early, got 3 years in probation. When it was over, when the judge's gavel came down for the last time, Liam and Arya walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. Claire was waiting for them on the steps, grinning. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Arya corrected. Claire pulled them both into a hug. "Drinks are on me tonight." "Rain check," Liam said. "I need to pick up Sophie." "Fair enough, but I'm holding you to it." She walked off, already on her phone with another story, another lead, another fight. Arya turned to Liam. "What now?" "Now we go home. We live our lives. We let this be over." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She smiled, and this time there was no fear behind it, just relief, and something that looked a lot like happiness. The neighborhood block party happened 2 weeks later. It was one of those perfect spring days where the weather couldn't decide if it wanted to be warm or cool, so it ended up being both. There were kids running everywhere, music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker, tables loaded with food that no one had coordinated but somehow all fit together. Liam stood by the grill, flipping burgers, while Sophie ran circles around the bounce house with a pack of other kids. Arya was at the drink table talking to one of the neighbors, laughing at something they'd said. She caught his eye across the yard and smiled. Liam smiled back. A few minutes later, she walked over, 2 cups of lemonade in her hands. She handed him one. "You look happy," she said. "I am." "Good. You deserve it." "So do you." She leaned against the table beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I've been thinking." "About?" "About what you said. That night, after everything started. About choosing to be here." "Yeah?" "I choose this. I choose you. I choose Sophie. I choose all of it." Liam set down the spatula and turned to face her. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her, right there in front of everyone, and he didn't care who saw. When they pulled apart, Sophie was standing a few feet away, hands on her hips, grinning. "Gross," she announced. "You'll understand when you're older," Liam said. "I hope not." Arya laughed, and Sophie ran off again, already distracted by something else. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of food and conversation, and the easy comfort of being surrounded by people who didn't need anything from him except his presence. Liam had spent so long being just a father, just a guy who fixed computers, just someone trying to get through the day. Now he was something more. Not because he'd done something heroic or extraordinary, but because he'd chosen to show up when it mattered. He'd chosen to help when it would have been easier to walk away. He'd chosen to believe that people were worth fighting for, even when the fight was hard and the outcome uncertain. And in choosing that, he'd found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. As the sun started to set and the party wound down, Arya reached for his hand. Not hiding, not hesitating, just reaching. Liam took it, lacing his fingers through hers. Sophie noticed, of course. She always noticed. But instead of making a comment, she just smiled. That knowing kid smile that said she understood more than she let on. "Can we go home now?" Sophie asked. "I'm tired." "Yeah, Bug. We can go home." The three of them walked back to the building together, Arya and Liam side by side, Sophie skipping ahead. When they reached the hallway, Arya paused at her door. "You want to come in?" she asked. "I could make dinner." "You don't cook," Liam said. "I could order dinner." He smiled. "That sounds perfect." They went inside, and Sophie immediately claimed the couch, curling up with a blanket and her tablet. Arya ordered pizza, and while they waited, she and Liam sat at the kitchen table, talking about nothing and everything. When the pizza arrived, they ate on the floor, Sophie between them, telling them about a game she'd played at the party. Liam watched her, watched Arya, and felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like home. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch and Liam had carried her back to his apartment and tucked her into bed, he stood in the doorway looking at her. She was growing up so fast. Too fast. But she was happy, and that was what mattered. When he went back to Arya's apartment, she was waiting for him. "She okay?" Arya asked. "Out like a light." "Good." They sat on the couch, Arya's head on his shoulder, the TV playing something neither of them was paying attention to. "Liam?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for everything." "You don't have to thank me." "I know, but I want to." He kissed the top of her head. "You're welcome." They sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being, and for the first time in longer than Liam could remember, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to look forward to, because the truth was, life didn't hand out happy endings. It handed out choices. And the people who ended up happy were the ones who chose to fight for it, even when it was hard, even when it was messy, even when it would have been easier to give up. Liam had made his choice. He'd chosen to step into the hallway that night, to help a stranger, to risk everything for someone who needed it. And in choosing that, he'd found something worth keeping. Not perfection. Not some storybook version of love where everything worked out cleanly, but something real. Something messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. And that, Liam thought, was more than enough. Morning came with gray clouds and the kind of cold that seeped through windows and settled into bones. Liam stood in his kitchen making coffee, watching the sky darken, knowing that today would be the day everything either came together or fell apart completely. Margaret had scheduled a meeting with the federal prosecutor for noon, and Claire had confirmed that 2 major news outlets were preparing follow-up stories on Treadwell's shell companies and hidden assets. The walls were closing in on him from every direction, but cornered animals were the most dangerous. Liam's phone rang just after 8. It was Margaret. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "Treadwell's lawyer just filed a motion claiming that the evidence against him was obtained illegally. They're arguing that everything you pulled from his server is inadmissible." Liam's stomach dropped. "Can they do that?" "They can try, and if they succeed, we lose our best ammunition against him." "What about the fraud case? That's all Arya's evidence, nothing to do with what I found." "The fraud case is solid, but without the information on Treadwell's financial crimes, he walks away clean. He might lose Derek, might lose some business contacts, but he doesn't go to jail, and he'll still have enough leverage left to come after both of you." Liam set his coffee down, his mind racing. "What do we need to do?" "The prosecutor wants to meet with you, today, before the scheduled meeting with Arya. They want to understand exactly how you obtained the files and whether there's any legal basis to argue the search was justified." "I broke into his server, Margaret. There's no gray area here." "Actually, there might be. If you can demonstrate that you were acting in defense of an imminent threat, that Treadwell was actively trying to harm Arya, and you had reason to believe he was about to escalate, we might be able to make a necessity defense argument. That's a long shot. It's the only shot we have. Can you be at my office in an hour? I'll be there. He hung up and immediately called his buddy to check on Sophie. She was fine, eating pancakes and watching cartoons, completely oblivious to the fact that her dad was about to sit in a room with federal prosecutors and explain why he'd committed multiple felonies. Arya texted him 20 minutes later. "Margaret told me. Are you okay?" He typed back, "I will be. Focus on your meeting. I'll handle this." That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. There was a long pause before she responded. "I'm sorry. This is my fault." "No, it's Treadwell's fault. We're just cleaning up his mess. I love you." Liam stared at the message, his chest tight. She'd never said that before. Neither had he, and this was possibly the worst timing in the history of bad timing. But it was also true. He typed back, "I love you too. We'll get through this." The meeting with the prosecutor was brutal. Liam sat across from a man named Richard Pelletier, who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit and had never smiled in his life. Margaret sat beside Liam, her expression calm and professional, while Pelletier's associate took notes. "Walk me through it," Pelletier said. "From the beginning." Liam did. He explained the threats, the blackmail, the escalating danger. He talked about the intrusion attempts on his system, the voice-altered phone calls, the fact that Treadwell had already demonstrated he was willing to destroy lives to maintain control. He laid out the timeline, showed the evidence of Treadwell's attacks, and explained why he'd believed that getting into Treadwell's server was the only way to stop him before someone got seriously hurt. When he finished, Pelletier was quiet for a long moment. "You understand that what you did was illegal," he said finally. "Yes." "And you did it anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" Liam met his eyes. "Because waiting for the legal system to catch up would have given Treadwell time to destroy everything, and because someone I care about was in danger, and I had the ability to help." "That's not how the law works, Mr. Carter." "I know. But sometimes the law moves too slow for real people with real problems." Pelletier's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He glanced at Margaret. "What's your argument here, counselor?" Margaret leaned forward. "Necessity defense. My client had a reasonable belief that Ms. Bennett was in imminent danger, that law enforcement would not be able to act quickly enough to prevent harm, and that his actions were the least harmful way to neutralize the threat. Under those circumstances, the illegal search becomes defensible." That's a stretch. "It's viable. And more importantly, it's true." Pelletier tapped his pen against his notepad, thinking. "Even if I buy the necessity argument, and I'm not saying I do, there's still the question of whether we can use the evidence. The defense will argue fruit of the poisonous tree. The evidence corroborates a pattern of criminal behavior that was already under investigation," Margaret countered. "The fraud case exists independently. The blackmail allegations exist independently. What Mr. Carter found simply connects the dots." "Simply," Pelletier repeated, his tone dry. "We're not asking you to ignore the law," Margaret said. "We're asking you to consider the context. Treadwell is a predator who's been operating unchecked for years. This is your chance to stop him." Pelletier was quiet for another long moment. Then he closed his folder and stood. "I need to discuss this with my team. We'll be in touch." "When?" Liam asked. "Soon." It wasn't the answer Liam wanted, but it was the only one he was going to get. They left the prosecutor's office and walked to Margaret's car in silence. Liam felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out everything inside him and left just the shell. "What do you think?" he asked when they were sitting in the parking garage. "I think Pelletier's smart enough to know that letting Treadwell walk would be a disaster. But I also think he's cautious. He won't move unless he's confident he can win. So we wait." "We wait." Liam checked his phone. It was almost 11:30. Arya's meeting with the prosecutor was in half an hour. "I should go," he said. "You can't be there, Liam. They'll want to talk to her alone." "I know, but I can wait outside." Margaret studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but stay out of sight." The last thing we need is someone accusing you of trying to influence her testimony. Liam spent the next 3 hours sitting in his car 2 blocks from the federal building, watching people come and go, his mind running through every possible outcome. Finally, at 3:15, Arya called. "How did it go?" Liam asked. "They offered me immunity." Relief flooded through him. "That's incredible. On the condition that I testify, not just about the fraud, but about everything. Derek, Treadwell, all of it." "You can do that." "I know, I already agreed." There was a pause. "They asked about you. What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you helped me when no one else would. That you put yourself at risk to protect me. That I wouldn't be here without you." Liam's throat tightened. "What did they say?" "Nothing. They just wrote it down." The call from Pelletier came 3 days later. Liam was at the park with Sophie, watching her climb on the jungle gym, when his phone rang. "Mr. Carter, this is Richard Pelletier. We've made a decision regarding the evidence you obtained." Liam's heart was pounding. "And?" "We're moving forward with charges against Marcus Treadwell. Multiple counts of extortion, wire fraud, and money laundering. The evidence you provided will be included in the case." "You're serious?" "I don't joke about federal charges, Mr. Carter. That said, there will be conditions. You'll need to testify about how you obtained the files. You'll be granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation, but if you lie or withhold information, the deal is void." "I understand." "Good. My office will be in touch to schedule a formal deposition. In the meantime, I'd advise you to stay out of trouble." "That's the plan." Pelletier hung up, and Liam stood there in the middle of the park, staring at his phone, barely able to process what he'd just heard. They'd won. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but they'd won. Sophie ran over, her face flushed from running. "Daddy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, Bug. Everything's good. You look weird." "Good weird or bad weird?" "I don't know yet." Liam laughed and scooped her up, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. He texted Arya. "It's over. They're charging him. We're clear." Her response came immediately. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Oh my God. Meet us at the park. We're celebrating." She showed up 20 minutes later, breathless and smiling wider than Liam had ever seen. Sophie ran to her immediately, and Arya swept her up in a hug. They walked to the ice cream shop together, Sophie chattering between them, holding both their hands. People passing by probably thought they were a family, and maybe, in a way, they were. The trial took 4 months to prepare. Liam testified twice, once in a deposition, once on the stand. He explained what he'd done, why he'd done it, and what he'd found. The defense attorney tried to rattle him, tried to paint him as a vigilante who'd broken the law for personal reasons. But Liam stuck to the facts, stayed calm, and told the truth. Arya testified too. She walked the jury through the fraud, the blackmail, the fear she'd lived with for months. She was poised, articulate, and devastating. By the time she stepped down, there wasn't a person in that courtroom who didn't believe her. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Treadwell was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The senior partner from Arya's company got 8. Derek Hale, who'd cut a deal early, got 3 years in probation. When it was over, when the judge's gavel came down for the last time, Liam and Arya walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sun. Claire was waiting for them on the steps, grinning. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Arya corrected. The neighborhood block party happened 2 weeks later. It was one of those perfect spring days where the weather couldn't decide if it wanted to be warm or cool, so it ended up being both. There were kids running everywhere, music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker, tables loaded with food that no one had coordinated but somehow all fit together. Liam stood by the grill, flipping burgers, while Sophie ran circles around the bounce house with a pack of other kids. Arya was at the drink table talking to one of the neighbors, laughing at something they'd said. She caught his eye across the yard and smiled. Liam smiled back. A few minutes later, she walked over, 2 cups of lemonade in her hands. She handed him one. "You look happy," she said. "I am." "Good. You deserve it." "So do you." She leaned against the table beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I've been thinking about what you said, that night after everything started, about choosing to be here." "Yeah?" "I choose this. I choose you. I choose Sophie. I choose all of it. Liam set down the spatula and turned to face her. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her, right there in front of everyone, and he didn't care who saw. When they pulled apart, Sophie was standing a few feet away, hands on her hips, grinning. Gross, she announced. You'll understand when you're older, Liam said. I hope not. Arya laughed and Sophie ran off again, already distracted by something else. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of food and conversation and the easy comfort of being surrounded by people who didn't need anything from him except his presence. As the sun started to set and the party wound down, Arya reached for his hand. Not hiding, not hesitating, just reaching. Liam took it, lacing his fingers through hers. Sophie noticed, of course. She always noticed. But instead of making a comment, she just smiled, that knowing kid smile that said she understood more than she let on. Can we go home now? Sophie asked. I'm tired. Yeah, Bug. We can go home. The three of them walked back to the building together, Arya and Liam side by side, Sophie skipping ahead. When they reached the hallway, Arya paused at her door. You want to come in? She asked. I could make dinner. You don't cook, Liam said. I could order dinner. He smiled. That sounds perfect. They went inside, and Sophie immediately claimed the couch, curling up with a blanket and her tablet. Arya ordered pizza, and while they waited, she and Liam sat at the kitchen table talking about nothing and everything. When the pizza arrived, they ate on the floor, Sophie between them, telling them about a game she'd played at the party. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch and Liam had carried her back to his apartment and tucked her into bed, he stood in the doorway looking at her. She was growing up so fast. Too fast. But she was happy. And that was what mattered. When he went back to Arya's apartment, she was waiting for him. She okay? Arya asked. Out like a light. They sat on the couch, Arya's head on his shoulder, the TV playing something neither of them was paying attention to. Liam? Yeah? Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to. He kissed the top of her head. You're welcome. They sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. And for the first time in longer than Liam could remember, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to look forward to. Because the truth was, life didn't hand out happy endings. It handed out choices. And the people who ended up happy were the ones who chose to fight for it, even when it was hard, even when it was messy, even when it would have been easier to give up. Liam had made his choice. He'd chosen to step into the hallway that night, to help a stranger, to risk everything for someone who needed it. And in choosing that, he'd found something worth keeping. Not perfection. Not some storybook version of love where everything worked out cleanly, but something real. Something messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. And that, Liam thought, was more than enough.